The hush that settles over the Red Keep each night is never quite complete. Beneath the marble floors, fires crackle in unseen grates, braziers gnaw softly on their coals, and somewhere far below, the dark waters of Maegor's secret tunnel slap against stone in their tireless rhythm. Varys came to know those sounds the way a septon knows his prayers. They were the pulse of the old fortress, steady, unending, whisper soft enough to block the screams of any soul the Iron Throne devoured. Tonight, that pulse felt different. It was quicker, more eager, as though the castle itself sensed what the spider had woven. In his powder-scented chambers, Varys warmed his hands over a single candle and watched the flame bend in the draught. The air smelt of dust, parchment, and the faintest trace of lavender oil he used to mask other baser smells a man might drag in after midnight. On the table before him lay a map of Westeros, traced with gold ink. Dorne glimmered in the guttering light, and beside it, pinned by a pearl-tipped needle, was a square of crimson silk, the banner of the Golden Company. "He lands tomorrow," the eunuch murmured. His breath fogged the candle glass, blurring the map. "Or the next, weather willing. And then the game becomes worth playing." For years he had whispered of a dragon reborn across the narrow sea. Kings and councils heard his warnings and laughed. "A girl," they said, picturing a silver-haired child scraping for coins in the bazaars of Meereen. They knew of Daenerys because she was convenient, the Stormsinger's tale of a last surviving princess, simple enough to fear yet distant enough to ignore. But they had never seen the other Targaryen, the one born amid smoke and spite, hidden in the alleys of Pentos where Illyrio Mopatis fattened his purse. The one whose name had once shivered across half the world. Viserys of House Targaryen, third of his name, son of the dragon. Varys slid a knuckle along the painted coastline, following it westward until his fingertip bumped the pearl pin. Every league crawled with risk. Lordlings with bright banners, Stepstone's pirates with sharper eyes than honor, and the ever-watchful fleets of Old Town whose captains still dreamt of Hightower glory. But the Golden Company moved as no common sellsword host. 20,000 blades, veterans from the disputed lands, men of Valyrian blood and Summer Isles cunning, led by a commander who carried centuries of exile in his veins. Black fire blood, Varys thought, and felt the past twist like a dagger. Bitter Steel's oath still breathed in those ranks, a vow forged in ashes when the last dragon died. "We are exiles no more," they sang whenever a new contract glittered on a table. Half a lifetime ago their dreams had seemed pitiful to the spider. A mad hope, a thread he could tug whenever real power required a distraction. Now that thread had become a rope, thick as mooring line, and it was wrapped around the neck of the Seven Kingdoms. He turned as a shadow filled the doorway. "You sent for me," whispered a voice dry as parchment. Qyburn entered without pretense of courtesy, closing the door on his silk sleeves. "The boy sleeps," he reported. Varys managed a faint smile. "Even princes must rest. And how is our young Tommen this evening?" "Damn? Dreaming of kittens." Qyburn drifted closer, eyes glinting under hooded lids. "You have a letter for me? One that must leave the city before dawn." The eunuch passed him a scroll sealed with plain wax. No sigil, no motto, only the faint imprint of a spider if the wax caught the light just so. "To Gulltown, addressed to a certain captain whose loyalty lies on a balance of gold thicker than his tongue." Qyburn tucked it into his sleeve. "Shall I wake the stable boys? Let them sleep. The docks have quieter sails." Varys folded his plump hands. "And remind our captain the reward doubles if his messenger outraces rumor itself." Rumor, he knew, flew on wings no silver could slow once it escaped. By the morrow, whispers would creep through Flea Bottom that Sellsword ships had been sighted off the Dornish coast. By week's end, every lordling with a raven and half a conscience would ask why so many spears marched beneath a red pennon ringed with gold. But if Varys was fortunate, if every coin, threat, or promise he had spent wove true, the answer would come too late to matter. The hour of the Beggar King was at hand. Across the narrow sea, dawn split the clouds like a sword stroke, staining the waters around the Myrish cog Maiden's Mercy, a delicate rose. The sea was calm, yet the sails of 40 ships trembled beneath a strange weight. not wind, but anticipation. Every deck thrummed as men checked armor one last time, tested bowstrings with calloused thumbs, and muttered over jugs of red so sour one swig could flay the tongue. These were not fresh-forged knights in pretty cloaks. They were the Golden Company, and each man bore more scars than sigils. John Connington stood at the prow of the Black Swan, the fleet's swiftest galley, watching the nearest sail. A wyvern coiled around a spear on gold felt, the emblem of Captain General Miles Toyne. Beside it flapped a banner Connington himself had sewn in lonely hours, pale smoke on black, three-headed dragon crowned by nine-pointed star. He remembered another banner, bright with a fiery heart, streaming above the stone drum when Stannis Creed split the sky with dragonstone thunder. It smelled of salt and betrayal, that wind, tasted of ash and exile. He had left his honor on the walls that day. Now he carried only resolve, and a sword polished so often the hilt had grown thin beneath his fingers. A good omen, Griff said to the silent waves. Calm seas. The king deserves no storms his first night west. The king. The word still startled him. Years had passed since the grizzled veterans of the company first marched a pale youth before the sellsword captains. Viserys had been 15 then, all sharp bones and sharper tongue, silver hair matted with Pentoshi dust. He raged at slights real and imagined. Cursed Daenerys for being born. Cursed the usurper. Cursed Illyrio for the thinnest meat. Cursed Connington most of all for teaching him humility. Yet each year carved new facets on that brittle crystal of a soul. The sellsword life left little room for vanity. Viserys learned to braid his hair tight and keep his grievances tighter. By 20, he had grown taller than his sister had ever been. Long-legged, raw-boned, with violet eyes that glittered fiercely beneath a dour brow. The company forged him in ways courts could not. He learned to ride fast under arrow fire, to break sieges with night assaults, to hold men's loyalty not by name alone, but by the iron ring of coin and bread. Miles Toyne taught him when to charge and when to bleed. The Black Priest of Volantis taught him the old Valyrian tongue, in whose harsh syllables the boy prince discovered a birthright fiercer than song. Connington taught him patience. "That is your throne," Griff would say, tapping the pommel of a dagger into the dirt while the boy sketched Westeros in shifting sand. "And that is your enemy." He would draw an uneven line between Dragonstone and King's Landing with his bootheel. "Distance is your first foe. Time the second. Conquer them both, and the rest will bend." Viserys bent. He bent until his back seemed made of steel cables rather than bone, bowed beneath memory and hunger and shame. He bowed, but he did not break. Connington admired the boy for that. Varys admired him more. A pliable monster, one the spider could cradle in his palms until the 7 kingdoms found themselves webbed and helpless. That was Viserys Stormborn, son of the last dragon. The morning after the world's longest night. A gull cried overhead. Connington followed its flight toward the half-clear horizon, where a thin green line marked land. Sunspear, he guessed, though they would not land beneath any Martell banner. The Dornish had their pride and their secrets. Doran might still be coaxed into alliance, but not until certain players moved upon the board. "Signal the fleet," he ordered the helmsman. "Half sails. We come ashore at daybreak tomorrow. Let the men rest their stomachs tonight." A few oars dipped, the galley slowed, and somewhere behind him, the rhythmic din of 600 sellswords retreated to a hum. Connington turned away from the rail to find Viserys leaning against the mainmast, arms folded, a thin smile carving his gaunt cheeks. "My Lord Griff," he said in the formal tone he adopted when soldiers watched. "Will Dorne greet me with flowers, do you think? Or scorpions?" "Whichever stings less," Connington replied evenly. "We do not seek a war with Sunspear, only a road north. Roads are for merchants." Viserys pushed off the mast. "I am a dragon. Dragons fly. A dragon with clipped wings is wiser for knowing gravity. We land, we march, and we live." Viserys sniffed, though the grin lingered. "Ever the old hen, Griff. Very well. Make your march. But know this, When I sit the throne, the first law I pass will be to forgive your caution as if it were treason." Connington laughed despite himself. "I'll carve the decree." Viserys' gaze slipped past him to the fleet, to the banners that blazed on every mast. The whip-thin prince lifted a hand as if to touch them, fingers trembling in the pink light. "They believe," he whispered, more to himself than to Connington. "After all these years, someone finally believes." "They believe in coin," the knight cautioned. "Coin can purchase loyalty, but it cannot purchase hope." Storms had shaped that hope into something iron-hard. Connington watched as the prince strolled down the deck, speaking to archers, pausing to joke with a scarred cook spooning gruel into wooden bowls. The sellswords looked up at him not with awe but with recognition. The nod a veteran gives another who has slept on muddy ground under the same indifferent moons. They saw him bleed often enough to know it wasn't wine in his veins. That counted for more than 1,000 crowns hammered in the shape of dragons. In King's Landing, dawn unfurled in heavy banners of smoke. Street merchants choked on the smell of butchered goats and boiling tallow as they rolled up shutters and counted bent coppers. None saw the raven that swept over the city walls, black wings beating northward. It carried a message penned in Cohoric ink upon Myrish vellum, bound for a hidden rookery in the Eyrie. There it would find Littlefinger, and their chaos would sprout its wildest weeds. Varys suspected the raven would not arrive in time. Pettier Baelish loved disorder so long as he remained half a game ahead, and these tidings would plant him 2 moves behind. Still, a wise spider feeds every web. One never knows which filament catches the richest prey. He left his chambers in swirling lavender perfume to hide the stink of haste, crossing the quiet galleries that ribbed Maegor's holdfast. At the foot of a spiral stair, a shadow detached from the wall. Lord Varys. Jaime Lannister bowed stiffly, armored in gold chased with pale crimson. Shadows under his eyes suggested another sleepless watch beside Tommen's door. "Sir Jaime." Varys clasped plump fingers. "You surprise me. Most men prefer their beds when the stars go out." "No. Most men are not kingslayers." "A point well taken." The eunuch tilted his head. "Shall I fetch the king's breakfast? Or is tonight's vigil not yet over?" Jaime's mouth twitched. "It never ends. Not while lions prowl the halls." Varys touched his arm. A gesture part sympathy, part deceit. "The realm owes you gratitude. Were it mine to bestow, I should shower you in concerts." "Songs sound dull when sellswords set sail," Jaime muttered. "So the rumors leak faster than ravens." Varys filed the knowledge away. "Sellswords come and go," he soothed. "Their captains chase coin like moths chase torchlight. In time both burn to you. Unless someone fans the flame." Jaime's eyes sharpened. "Do you know who that someone is?" "Who can say?" Varys spread his hands. "The free cities teem with princes that never were, and dragons that never hatched." Jaime considered him a long moment. "And if a real dragon lands?" Varys allowed himself a sigh, equal parts resignation and pity. "Then may the Mother grant us mercy, Sir Or. For the realm has little left to spare." "Ben? Dao?" He withdrew before the Kingslayer could ask another question. Steps led him downward to a narrow passage, seldom trod by guards. The stones wept salt water here, exhaling the distant tide that curled beneath the city like a serpent. At the corridor's end, a door of black oak opened into a cell so small, it scarcely deserved the name. A single torch burned, lighting damp walls scrawled with lunatic prayers. In the center of the room sat a heavy wooden crate, bound by iron hoops. Tiny holes had been drilled into the lid. From within came a faint scratching. Varys knelt, hands gentle on the iron. "Be calm," he whispered in High Valyrian. A hiss answered him, soft, hungry, impatient. 4 months earlier, a Lysine smuggler's galley foundered on a sandbar off the Arbor. Its cargo of silks and secrets spilled into the sea. Something alive was rescued that day beneath blistering suns. Something a dragon princess far across the world would never again count among her children. Inside the crate crouched a creature of smoke-black scales and quivering wings, no larger than a raven's. Its golden eyes flared at the eunuch's voice, and a wisp of pale flame leaked between needle teeth. "The world has chosen your brother," Varys cooed. "Not your mistress." She wanders forgotten in eastern dust while Viserys rises. With you at his shoulder, who will dare deny the blood of the dragon? The hatchling snapped at a slat, sparks dancing. Varys closed the crate, fastening the locks. His heart hammered. All his life he had feared magic, despised it for the pain it once dealt him, yet fear had never ruled him. Power ruled, and power often came swaddled in fear. He straightened and smoothed invisible wrinkles from his robes. "Patience," he told the cell door. The torch, himself. "The game is not yet begun." By nightfall, the Golden Company made landfall on a lonely stretch of Dornish coast, where the dunes met thornbush flats, and the wind tasted of baked salt. No banners flew. They marched inland by moonlight, boots muffled in shifting sand, leaving no more sign of their passage than the tide already erased. 3 miles brought them to an abandoned tower once used by fishermen of House Jourdain. The smell of gulls clung to its stones. There the captains gathered around a sand-scratched table, as the prince unfurled Varys' final letter. Miles Toyne read aloud, voice low and even. "Meet the blind priest at the old sept of Lemonwood. 3 nights hence. Offer him the whisper of wings for the price of silence. The tide will carry rumor inland faster than our feet. Delay the march until he is content. The Dornish road is paved with promises, not swords. Bend first the sand, and the spears will follow." Viserys traced the words with a fingertip, then set the parchment aflame in the brazier. "A blind priest," he observed once the ash cooled. "Varys enjoys his riddles." Toyne tugged his beard. "If the rumor is wings, I take it we have acquired one." Connington nodded. "The eunuch's ships bear a gift. We shall meet them upriver from Sunspear." "What gift?" asked a Lysine Selsail leaning on his pike. Viserys smiled, silver hair glimmering. "One that breathes fire." A hush fell. Even hardened men who had slain warlocks and cell sorcerers felt the chill that swept the room. Dragons were myth on distant horizons. Everyone swore they lived, yet none expected to stand within scorching distance. Toyne clasped the prince's shoulder. "If it is true, Westeros will kneel before you." "If?" Viserys shook off the hand. "There is no if, Miles. Only when." "When," Toyne conceded. "Then we shall keep quiet as Varys commands." Connington studied the prince. In candlelight, Viserys looked gaunter than usual, his cheekbones honed by sea hunger, his eyes twin storms of resolve. Dragons were a birthright, yes, but they were also a mirror. They showed a man what he wished to be. If Viserys looked into that mirror and saw not flame, but shadow. Connington pushed the thought aside. 3 nights, he said. "Rest, sharpen steel, gather water. When we march, every footstep must land on stone, not sand." Viserys crossed to the arrow slit, staring into the moonlit desert. "I have walked on sand my whole life, Griff. It never holds a king." In the Riverlands, Samwell Tarly bent over a candle-streaked table, quill squeaking across parchment. The rookery above Old Stones had little to do with dragons or rightful heirs, yet ravens whispered of them even here. Maester Marklin, old and half-blind, had sent Sam to copy fresh accounts from the travelers who came north along the King's Road. Talk of gilded spears in Dorne, of a pale prince who called himself the Storm Dragon. Sam hesitated each time the quill reached that name, remembering broken promises, shattered vows, the old bear's death. Across the flinty courtyard, Gilly sang to her babe, a lullaby of the north that spoke of ice and silent woods. Life tugged forward in small ways even as great tides shifted. Sam wrote the words anyway. "Knowledge must be preserved," the maester said. And perhaps one day Jon Snow, somewhere in the far reaches of Winterfell's new rule, would need to know how dragons returned, not with a roar but with a whisper. On the 3rd night, when the waning moon dipped below clouds and the lemon trees of southern Dorne sheeted silver in the breeze, Viserys rode alone to the Sept ruins. His cloak was sand-colored, his horse fleet and silent. He carried no sword, only a dagger sheathed in boiled leather. Connington shadowed him at a distance, unseen by the prince, unseen even by the nightjar perched upon a crumbled arch. The old knight trusted Viserys' courage, but not his caution. The sept lay broken as a smashed chalice, its marble floor cracked by roots, its dome collapsed in a storm that locals still cursed a decade later. Beneath the twisted ribs of stone knelt a man robed in ragged brown. His eyes were white pits, milk-filmed and sightless. "Who comes?" the priest croaked. "Your king?" Viserys answered, swinging down. "No king sits the Iron Throne this night." "I did not say he sat. I said he comes." "Ben?" Wind sighed through broken windows. The blind priest sniffed. "I smell salt. I crossed an ocean. And smoke." Viserys drew a small wooden box from his saddlebag. He lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in black cloth, lay a single dragon's egg no larger than a melon, shell-mottled obsidian veined with red. "Will you swear fealty, priest?" The old man reached out, fingers trembling. They brushed the egg's surface and recoiled as though burned. He bowed until his forehead touched cracked marble. "The Lord of Light showed me a shadow with wings," he whispered, voice hoarse with awe. "I did not believe until now." "Believe," Viserys urged, "and carry that belief to Sunspear. The Prince of Dorne will hear." "Hear? No. He must listen." The priest nodded, cradling the egg against his chest. "It beats," he breathed. Viserys watched him shuffle into the darkness beyond the sept. Then he closed the box and mounted. Moonlight pooled in his violet eyes. In that moment, Connington saw a spark of something he had never glimpsed in the boy before. Wonder unharnessed by rage. "That went well," the knight said, slipping from shadow. Viserys did not startle. "He is blind, Griff, yet he saw me more clearly than half the lords of Westeros ever will. Let us hope they open their eyes before we draw swords." Viserys touched heel to horse flank. "They will open them when they see wings." They rode back toward the coast beneath veils of starlight. Somewhere south, waves gnawed the sand with endless patience. Night creatures scurried from the sound of hoofbeats. Above, the sky was black glass, and in that glass burned a bleeding comet, faint but unmistakable, trailing red across the heavens. The prince raised a hand as if to seize the streaking ember. "Even the gods send signs," he murmured. Connington recalled another comet, one said to herald dragons risen in the east. Daenerys, the girl they had left to fate, must have wondered why the gods favored her only to strip favor away. Fate was cruel. But so was war, and war obeyed no comet. Sunspear awoke to chaos. Ravens came first, beating fevered wings against the dawn. By midday, 3 riders thundered through the Shadow City bearing the sigil of Lemonwood, shouting breathless tidings. Sel's words landed. "A prince walks. A dragon stirs." Prince Doran Martell listened in his shaded gardens, gout-swollen ankle propped on a velvet cushion. Each report pricked him like a sand viper's fang. For years he had hoarded patience, feeding it sweet wine while scheming behind silk curtains. He had promised his sister vengeance for Elia, promised his daughter a crown. Yet time eroded promises, and the sand swallowed bones of old ambitions. Now, from that same sand, a dragon rose. Not the shy maiden so many spies chased, but the brother no one wanted. Aenys black fires brewed. Obara Sand snarled when she heard. Obara towered over the garden bench, a spear in hand. Dusk-red leather hugging sun-scarred arms. She spit in the dirt. The Golden Company were founded on treason. Let them choke on it. "Quiet," Doran murmured. "The wind shifts too quickly." Nymeria Sand, sleek in a lavender gown, paced. "Varys would not back fools without teeth. We must learn what fangs Prince Viserys bears. Then shall." "Dragons have more than fangs," Tiny observed, gentle as falling petals. Doran closed his eyes. In the darkness he saw Elia, hair unbound, holding a baby boy who had never cried in the cradle of his skull. He swallowed. "Summon Maester Caliot. We draft a raven to the prince. We request audience. And we wait." "Wait," Obara scoffed. while Sellswords sharpen blades at our gates. Patience is a spear, thrust from surprise. She stalked off cursing. Nymeria watched her go, then turned back. Father, the realm may burn before patience bears fruit. Then we water patience with wine. Tiny knelt, laying a cool palm on his gout-swollen foot. We shall prepare a feast, she promised. A welcome worthy of a dragon. Weeks passed. The Golden Company crossed Dorne as merchants, never marching more than 600 men together, each column disguised under false banners. A Myrish textile fleet here, a troop of Cohoric mummers there. The road to Blackhaven saw a flower festival appear overnight, where Sellswords danced clumsily with farmers' daughters, who swooned at tales of distant wars. By the time rumors sorted truth from jest, the company was gone, leaving only coin and footprints. Viserys traveled at the heart of the hidden host, veiled by conjured fog of rumor. He slept in desert caves, in wine sinks, in abandoned watchtowers haunted by crows. Connington never let him ride the same horse 2 days running. Toyne rearranged the captains nightly, reshuffling assignments so no assassin's blade could memorize a pattern. And always, above them, the hatchling circled. Varys' ship delivered it up the Greenblood, where the Rhoynish still worshipped Mother River. In secret, under canvas at dusk, the eunuch revealed the creature. It stood as tall as a mastiff, wingspan twice its body length. Dark scales trimmed in red like embers in smoke. It hissed at Viserys, then sniffed and lowered its wedge head. When he touched its brow, heat pulsed through his palm. "What shall we name it?" Toyne asked. Viserys drew a breath thick with ash and destiny. "Balerion," he said, "for the Black Dread." "No," Connington objected gently. "Balerion was doom made flesh. We need a symbol of justice, not terror." Viserys' gaze hardened. Justice is terror to the guilty. He kept the name. The dragon did not care. It cared only for meat and flame. Each feeding, its roar grew louder, echoing over empty valleys. Small folk spoke of a demon loose in the canyons. Some fled to water gardens with tales of winged ghosts. At last the Golden Company reached the Stormland's border under a slanting autumn sun. Before them rose the rain-scarred ramparts of Griffin's Roost, Connington's ancestral home, stripped from him after Robert's victory. Ravens wheeled like black petals over the towers. The current lord, a Baratheon cousin, had fled at the first whisper of Connington's return. Inside the still warm halls, sailors found bannermen who surrendered before swords left scabbards. Connington walked the courtyard in silence, palm brushing moss-shagged stone. Memories flooded, the smell of roast boar on feast days, the clang of Quinton practice, his father's laugh when Jon toppled from the saddle at 9. All gone. Yet the castle still stood, waiting as faithful as a dog. Viserys joined him atop the battlements. "Your home," he said. "Was." The prince leaned against a crenelle. "Take it back." "Swear to me, Griff, that when I am king, this castle is yours." Connington faced him. In the prince's eyes he saw the ghost of Rhaegar, not the lilting poet knight the bards adored, but the darker soul who gazed into prophecy and chose doom over duty. Yet he also saw something new. Recognition. The boy he'd tutored, fought beside, endured storms with. That boy now feared no man's judgment, only failures. "I swear." Viserys repeated. Connington knelt. "My sword is yours until death, your grace." Footsteps thundered up the stair. A Lysine sergeant emerged, breathless. "Ravens from King's Landing, my prince. The usurper's cub is dead. Poison, they say." Viserys' expression scarcely changed. "Poor boy." Connington rose slowly. Tommen dead meant Cersei alone held court, her rule stitched with fear and wildfire. King's Landing would be a nest of daggers. Viserys turned to the horizon where storm clouds bruised the sea. "Ready the host," he ordered. "We march, at first light." "To where?" Toyne asked when word reached the yard. Viserys' smile flashed like a blade. "To claim what is mine." Varys had planned for this moment. He knew chaos would strike the Red Keep, the instant Tommen's life guttered out. He had not planned the timing. Qyburn's smaller councils kept their secrets. But he had prepared 1,000 candles for the darkness. The night the boy king died, wildfire pots mysteriously vanished from the vaults. The Alchemists' Guild searched in vain while rumors claimed the Faith militant planned a coup. Qyburn's pale monster of the Kingsguard vanished from his chambers, leaving only a trail of crimson footprints and the stink of carrion. Pycelle was found poisoned in his bed, beard stuffed with gold coins. Varys's little birds scurried through forgotten warrens, slicing bell ropes, clogging chimney flues, loosing rats in the queen's wardrooms. By dawn, the Red Keep was a hive torn open, its drones drunk on fear. Cersei Lannister staggered into the throne room, barefoot, hair mussed, eyes wild. She screamed for her brother's sword, for Ser Meryn's head, for someone, anyone, to bring her a potion strong enough to burn grief away. None answered. Even the mountain's footsteps no longer echoed. Varys watched from a hidden gallery above the throne dais, unseen behind a carved cherub. The hall stank of overturned oil lamps and rotting shadows. Sunlight lanced through the open doors, framing Cersei in a halo of dust motes. She looked less a lioness than a harpy hacked to bone, wings torn, feathers sodden, and still she held the crown. "My son," she sobbed, though no body lay atop the steps. "My sweet boy." Varys slipped away before pity weakened his resolve. Down twisting corridors he hurried, slippers whisk-whisk against rushes, until he reached his chambers. A satchel waited upon the bed, packed with scrolls, coin, and a small iron key. He lifted it, feeling the weight of decades settle on his shoulders. Spiders spun webs, but webs were delicate. At last, they must be abandoned for the spider to feast. 5 leagues from King's Landing, the Golden Company encamped beneath bannerless pavilions. Balerion circled high, a smoky cross against the afternoon sun. Peasants gawked from hedges at the rows of gleaming spears, at the camel-humped supply wagons, at the young man in mail who rode along the line speaking Valyrian with a sellsword's grin. Some knelt. Others fled for the city, half mad with tales of dragonfire. Viserys allowed them to escape. Fear was a healthier herald than fanfare. That night, Connington entered the prince's pavilion to find Varys waiting beside the war table. The eunuch looked travel-worn, his bald scalp gleaming with sweat, lavender scent nearly drowned by horse musk. "You left the city," Connington noted. "It is no longer safe," Varys replied calmly. His small eyes glittered. "Nor stable." Viserys poured wine, offered him none. "What news?" "The queen barricades the Red Keep. She has perhaps 2,000 loyal men at arms. The city watch quakes, the Faith militant fans rebellion in the streets, and the Iron Bank reconsiders its books. King's Landing is ripe fruit. One squeeze, and the juice is ours." "Nender." "Then we march tonight," Viserys declared. Connington frowned. "A siege by night invites chaos." "Chaos is our friend," Varys said softly. "It has served us every step." Viserys raised his cup. "To chaos, then, and to thrones reclaimed. Wine the color of hearts, blood sloshed." Connington lifted his own, though his gut clenched. He had fought in sieges, seen torches drop from trembling hands onto tar-soaked palisades, watched mothers fling babes from burning walls. Chaos fed vultures. But Viserys wanted wings above all, and wings demanded fire. Dawn never truly comes to King's Landing on days such as these. Smoke curtains the rising sun, cloaking spires in choking gray. Bells toll, not in joyous peal but in a jangled panic, as if each bronze mouth argues with the next. The gates of the city yawn open before an invisible foe, their guards bribed, threatened, or vanished. The Golden Company stepped through the Dragon Gate first. Toyne carried a white banner dipped in red. Surrender granted, surrender taken. Alongside him rode Connington beneath Griffin standards. Viserys followed last, clad in polished plate engraved with 3-headed dragons, his new cloak woven from black silk trimmed in scarlet. Balerion swooped low, over the spires, a hissing promise of doom. Small folk knelt. Sparrows shrieked prayers. Gold cloaks threw down their spears, ripping off identifying cloaks to melt into crowds. Some begged mercy. Some spat. Some simply stared, as though the city had conjured a nightmare so vivid it dared not blink. Yet the Red Keep still stood, a crimson lord above the bay. Stories claimed 700 steps climbed its steep approach. Today they seemed 1,000. Connington led the vanguard up switchback ways past crumbling statues of dragon lords long defaced by usurpers' rule. Halfway they met resistance. Lannister levies, perhaps 800 men in alchemists' leathers, jammed the main stair. Behind them, archers readied under stone murder holes. And at their head towered Sir Gregor Clegane, face hidden behind an iron helm shaped like a skull. Under torchlight, the mountain's armor shone oily with dark stains. Qyburn's handiwork had stripped the man of voice and mercy alike. He raised a great sword thick as a beam, pointing at Viserys. Toyne blew a short note on a Myrish horn. Crossbows clicked in answer. Clegane charged. The stair shuddered with each thunderous step. Archers loosed. Crossbow bolts clanged off his cuirass or splintered on the stair. He carved a path through Toyne's vanguard, bowling men aside like ninepins. Connington spurred forward. "Hold the line." Viserys wheeled Balerion overhead, voice shrill with Valyrian words of fire. The dragon dove. Flame spilled, a brief torrent of orange that sizzled on armor. The mountains staggered, charred paint bubbling from his gorget, yet did not fall. He swung, shearing a sellsword's head clean off. It took 10 spearmen to hamstring the brute. He dropped to one knee, roaring soundlessly. Viserys slid from saddle, stalked forward, drew a thin Braavosi blade Connington had gifted him. "Your reign ends," he hissed, and plunged the sword through a crack in the helm. Silence crashed. The stair steamed with blood. Archers broke. Lannister men fled upward only to find griffin-marked lights spilling from postern doors, where Varys' little birds had opened ways. Panic spread through the keep like wildfire, which indeed began to simmer as hidden caches erupted in green gouts, where emptied and relit. By midday, the throne room was theirs. Cersei made her last stand before the Iron Throne itself, barefoot still, hair now wild as briar. Gold shifted under her eyes. She had wept so much her voice cracked like dry twigs. Half a dozen Queensguard corpses lay sprawled at her feet. She lifted a short dagger, rust-speckled, and pointed it at Viserys. "You are nothing," she spat. "A beggar with a stolen beast. This throne belongs to lions." Viserys approached. Each step rang on marble. Behind him, Toyne and Connington flanked. Balerion prowled in the shadows, tail lashing. "Lions," Viserys echoed. "Once, dragons ate lions." He held out a hand. "Kneel and live." Her laugh was brittle glass. "Live? My children are dead. My father rots. My brother." Tears blurred her sneer. "There is no life." "Then die." She slashed at him. Connington knocked the blade aside. Toyne grabbed her arm. She snarled, twisting like a feral thing. "Bind her," Viserys ordered. "Trial awaits." As Toyne's men dragged her away, she cursed him with every breath. Viserys watched her vanish through the throne door. Only then did he turn toward the Chair of Swords. The Iron Throne loomed, cruel and vast. Shadow draped its barbs. Connington held his breath. Toyne wiped soot from his brow. Varys nodded once, eyes shining. Viserys climbed the last steps. He did not rush. Each footfall echoed through hollows of centuries. At the seat, he paused, running a finger over a blade turned red by reflected torchlight. Then he seated himself, stiff at first, adjusting until the hilts nestled into bony shoulders like roosting ravens. Silence breathed. Connington went to one knee. "All hail Viserys of House Targaryen, third of his name, King of the Andals, the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, Protector of the Realm." Toyne knelt second. "Long may he reign." Varys bowed low, the motion of a servant who has finally delivered the last gift. His voice carried like spider silk. "The realm remembers your grace." Dragons do not forget. Viserys surveyed the hall. Blood-smeared mosaics. Smoke curled from fissures where wildfire yet smoldered. And between the broken pillars stood men who had lived for coin and now bent knee for more. Yet above it all, Balerion crouched on a fallen chandelier, wings mantling the throne as though guarding brood. A thin smile crooked the king's mouth. "Send ravens," he commanded. "To Winterfell, to Sunspear, to Old Town. Tell them their king summons them. And let the faith know the crown begs blessing." "Now." Connington bowed his head, though he knew blessings would not cleanse the rivers soon to run. Night fell on the first day of Viserys' reign. He sat alone at a narrow table in Maegor's Solar overlooking Blackwater Bay. Armor gone, he wore a simple black tunic. Candlelight flickered across his hollow cheeks. On the table lay 3 items: a map, a goblet of arbor red, and a single dragon scale no larger than a coin, shed by Balerion when the creature clawed a parapet to rest. Viserys turned the scale over and over. Each side shimmered obsidian, yet faint red veins pulsed beneath as if the scale still lived. "So small," he murmured. "But it cut the moon once." He pictured Daenerys somewhere across endless dunes, her 3 dragons screaming vengeance. Someday she would come. Someday prophets would hail her storm. But by then, Viserys meant to hold a realm so tightly she could not pry one talon beneath. The door opened. Varys slipped inside. "Forgive the intrusion, your grace. The maesters have prepared the coronation seals." Viserys did not look up. "And the trial?" "Queen Cersei is confined. The faith demands she face the high septon. The lords of the west grumble, but send no armies yet." "Nah." Viserys lifted the goblet, swirling wine. "We shall grant the lioness a stage. Tomorrow, she confesses before the realm. And when her head falls, I will grant lands to any Lannister who bends the knee." "A merciful gesture," Varys said softly. "Not mercy. Strategy." He drank. "And the girl?" "Princess Myrcella is gone. Some say to Dorne, others to Braavos." Viserys traced the coastline on the map. "Let her run. Children make fine pawns when grown." Varys approached the window. Outside, Balerion's roar echoed, shivering the glass. "Your grace," he asked, "what of your sister?" The king's eyes narrowed. Candle flame danced in their violet depths. "Daenerys has her path. Mine crosses hers only at journey's end. And if that end pits dragon against dragon?" Viserys' smile was thin as a razor. "Then the sky will burn brighter than the song of ice and fire ever foretold." Varys bowed. "The realm is yours to shape." As he departed, Viserys pressed the scale to his lips. Beyond the window, wildfire smoke smudged the stars, and across those stars drifted new omens, comets, prophecies, whispers in the flames. Kings sometimes ruled a lifetime and left no print. Others, crowned for a day, scarred history beyond healing. Viserys intended to carve his name into the bones of the world. And perhaps in the end, the world would beg him to stop. Far away, on a slate-gray sea, lit only by the chill lanterns of night, a sailing ship battered northward. Its deck was empty save for 2 figures, a woman in tattered Dothraki silks and a dwarf swathed in wool. Dragons circled overhead, crackling flame. "They crown another," Tyrion Lannister said, reading the latest Raven scroll. "Your brother, Daenerys Targaryen?" stared across the waves. "He was never my brother," she whispered. Tyrion crumpled the parchment. "He sits your throne." She touched the dragon at her shoulder. The largest, Drogon, whose wings cast moon shadow across the deck. "Then let us see how long he keeps it." The sails billowed. Somewhere beyond horizon, flame answered flame. The Game of Thrones spun anew. Threads tangled in webs beneath which even spiders prayed for mercy. And the night grew darker, for 2 dragons now flew where once there had been one. And the bells began tolling before dawn, thin bronze voices threading the fog that clung to Blackwater Bay. King's Landing stirred like a wounded animal, twitching shutters, muttered prayers. Chamber pots tipped into gutters already slick with last night's rain. Every street from Mudgate to the Street of Sisters festered with speculation. The Dragon King would sit in judgment today, and a lioness would bleed beneath his gaze. Near Cobbler's Square, a gaunt septon in tattered grey stood atop a barrel, and rasped scripture at the milling throng. He spoke of the maiden's tears for innocent souls devoured by sin, of the father's stern rod poised above prideful crowns, of the warrior's sword turning against those who mistook cruelty for strength. But his words fell into a sea already surging with other sermons. Merchants promising fresh loaves if Viserys abolished the bread tax. Thieves swearing blind that the new king would pardon petty crimes. Red-robed priests claiming a fire-forged destiny for the storm dragon. Criers hired by pettier Baelish hissed that the spider ruled from shadows, that Viserys was but a puppet dancing on silken threads. The cries echoed off cracked stone until prophecy and rumor tangled so thick, no one could tell one truth from another. At the back of the crowd, Arya Stark watched from beneath a hood stiff with travel dust, fingers curled around needle's worn hilt. She had come south with the Brotherhood, slipped through the gate before the city seals at dawn. Gendry muttered beside her, blue eyes flicking toward every gold cloak who passed too close. Thoros of Myr burrowed deeper into his ragged mantle, wine-soured breath misting the chill air. They were ghosts in daylight, each marked by the war that had broken Westeros, yet even ghosts felt a heartbeat quicken when the bells rang like judgment. "Will he do it?" Arya asked, voice low. Gendry shrugged. If he wants the city to love him, he might show mercy. Mercy. She tasted the word and found it bitter. When last she'd glimpsed Queen Cersei, the woman's laughter had echoed down the Red Keep's corridors as Septa Mordane screamed. Mercy for that? No. Arya's hand tightened. Dragons don't give mercy. Gendry studied her a heartbeat, then nodded. In the Red Keep's inner ward, Connington stood helmed beside a line of Golden Company veterans, each resplendent in freshly polished half-plate. Many had replaced foreign crests with new gorgets hammered to resemble dragon heads. Sunlight flashed on their spears as the captains marshaled ranks for the procession. The old knight felt the citadel around him pulse with anxious life. Stable boys scurrying, ravens croaking in lofts, silks rustling where pyromancer adepts darted about extinguishing torches too near wildfire vaults. Yet beneath the din lurked a hush, as if every soul sensed today would draw a first deep breath of the king's reign. Viserys emerged from Maegor's holdfast flanked by Jon Miles Toyne and Varys. He wore charcoal velvet slashed with red, no crown yet, but a circlet of black iron glimmered at his belt. Swords forged from nails prized out of Harrenhal's ancient beams, a gift from the company's smiths. Balerion fluttered overhead, bigger by the week, muscled shoulders rippling each time he adjusted perch on a shattered gargoyle. When the dragon hissed, heat rippled across the courtyard. Men stepped back, sweat beading on brows despite the morning chill. "Lord Connington," Viserys greeted. Voice calm. "Is the path clear?" "To the Sept of Baelor, your grace. We have a double shield wall for the avenue and crossbowmen on every roof where a bolt might matter." "Now, bolts matter little against prophecy." The king's lips curved slightly. "But they please anxious hearts. Well done." Varys fluttered his fingers in polite applause. The small folk already lined the streets 3 deep. Some shout your name, some pray, some sell boiled rats shaped like dragons. A hopeful omen, I'm sure. Toyne growled. "Hopeful rats?" "Profitable ones," the spider corrected. "The thriving penny market hints at faith in tomorrow, sir." Viserys chuckled. "Then let the city feast on rats. I will give them better fare when coffers fill." He mounted the marble steps, gaze sweeping banners, the trio of dragon heads in red silk, the golden skull of Bittersteel, the griffin of Connington newly sewn azure on white. For one lingering heartbeat he hesitated. Connington saw tension carve the young king's shoulders, as if a sudden question weighed heavier than plate. But the moment passed. Viserys drew breath and strode out, a shadow at his heel. Cersei Lannister awoke to chains biting wrists. A thin slit of light seeped through the cell's only window, turning dust motes to flecks of molten gold. Almost beautiful as she narrowed her eyes, if she pretended she was back in Casterly Rocks, Sept of the Skies, playing at piety while Father smiled indulgently. But Father was carrion now, and the rock lay beyond reach. She flexed fingers swollen beneath iron. One nail split, crusted brown. Queens do not look at dirt, she told herself, even as foul straw rasped her bare feet. Queen's command. Yet her voice felt foreign when she used it. Yesterday she'd shouted until throat bled, and the gold cloaks had laughed. Outside, footsteps clanged. Keys rattled. The door opened onto a hallway flanked by torchbearers in dragon black livery. No herald announced her. Two silent Unsullied entered instead. Yes, Unsullied, the eunuch's new purchase from Astapor, and forced her up by the elbows. They draped a cloak of rough sackcloth about shoulders, topped with a hood. Animal, she spat. They did not reply. Steel-shod feet marched her from cell to corridor to stairwell. Each landing smelled slightly different. Charcoal, baking bread, lye wash, fresh sawdust, secrets. She tried to mark turns but gave up. Maegor's Keep was a maze even before Varys replaced locks. At last, air brightened. They reached a courtyard humming with murmurs. The sack hood lifted for a moment. Daylight stabbed her eyes, painting the world white. And there, rows upon rows of armored foreigners, dragon banners snapping, Tommen's court banners torn down, her gilded lions flung face down in mud. Stench of horse and smoke knotted in her gut. Ahead loomed the sept of Baelor's scarred steps. Cersei remembered walking those stones to face the High Sparrow, back when faith still believed itself stronger than gold. That day she'd felt naked. Today she wore pride like diamond mail. Walk, hissed one Unsullied, gutter Valyrian syllables thick on his tongue. She lifted her chin and climbed. A mob roared beyond the rising vantage. Thousands filling every inch of the square. Bodies pressing balconies, rooftops, window scarp, even the gargoyle ledges where braver urchins perched barefoot. The reacting city. That's what Tyrion had called them once. Oh, how they reacted now. Some with awe, some with hunger, some with purest hate. When she stumbled, gravel bit knee. Blood smeared white marble. A cheer went up, crude and eager. Cersei's cheeks flamed, yet a twisted laugh bubbled behind cracked lips. Hounds bay for scraps, she thought, but who will chain a dragon when it turns on them? Inside the sept's nave, columns soared like petrified giants. The seven-pointed star mosaic remained cracked where wildfire explosion had ripped through years ago, yet candles burned anew along each aisle, their scented smoke ghosting rafters. The benches overflowed with lords summoned overnight. Hightower envoys in chastened gray, Freys thin-lipped and shift-eyed, even two Manderleys whisper consulting slips of parchment. Every seat purchased by fear or promise. Cersei's escort halted at the dais foot. There sat Viserys, cross-legged atop a plain oak judge's chair rather than the Iron Throne. This audience belonged to faith and crown both. The High Septon stood robed in cloth of silver near a basin of holy water, trembling fingers wreathed in ruby rings. And behind them towered Balerion, chained but barely, wings semi-spread so that torchlight flickered across obsidian scales like crimson dawn rippling on wine. The smell of dragon filled the air. Char. Ozone. Old cedar. One wrong spark, Cersei thought, and this shrine becomes a pyre. Perhaps that is his plan. The Unsullied forced her to kneel on rough boards laid where tile cracked. A hush fell, heavy as stones. Viserys regarded her in silence. He looked younger up close than rumors suggested, cheeks still carrying the gaunt hollows of Selzord camp life, eyes brilliant amethyst set in bruised sockets. His hair was bound with a single black ribbon, ends falling past shoulders. The weak candles behind him gave a halo effect that might have been saintly if not for that smile, a line carved by thin knives. Cersei of House Lannister, he began, voice echoing. You stand accused of treason, murder of His Grace King Aerys II, murder of His Grace King Viserys kinsman, murder of His Grace King Tom and I, conspiracy with foreign powers, and sundry lesser crimes. How plead you? How plead? Her laugh rasped like dry leaves. I plead a queen's right. You are no king, little beggar. Your father burned alive hundreds. Your brother fed by dogs. Your sister. A hiss from Balerion cut her speech. Heat poured over her skin. Blister hot, yet strangely enlivening. Connington stepped forward, knuckles white on sword pommel. Viserys raised a palm. Answer, lioness. She spat blood. Guilty of nothing save loving my children. Can you say the same? A ripple murmured through pews. The High Septon cleared his throat. His Grace asks again. I answered. Silence. Toyn's fingers twitched near dagger hilt. Varys' expression melted to vague sorrow. Arya, watching from shadow above an archway, felt pulse hammer. Kill her now? End it, whisper of names nearly on her lips. Viserys leaned forward. Your children are dead because you reached too high. You poisoned a king. You murdered more in your quests. I learned from your father. Madness begets madness. Perhaps. He rose. Yet madness alone cannot guide a realm. A blade must fall. The High Septon flexed trembling hands. If it please the crown, the faith grants clemency of confession. Let the accused speak her sins, beg the Seven's mercy, and perchance find absolution beyond. Cersei turned blazing eyes on robed Septon. Faith, you traded crowns for coin. We traded war for peace. Peace. She barked. There will be no peace. Dragons devour peace. Then? Viserys gestured. Two unsullied hauled her upright, marched her to kneel at basin foot. The Septon dipped a cloth in holy water, lifted it. Confess, he urged softly, voice thick with dread. Cersei stared at Viserys, broken nails curling. I confess I regret nothing. She looked toward the crowd, found few who met her gaze. Hear me, wretches. A lion's roar echoes long after the throat is crushed. When winter comes for this paper king, remember my words. She spat into the basin. Gasps. Rose. The High Septon recoiled, robe drenched. Viserys' lips thinned. Then the sentence is death. Ace, every sentence in this city, Cersei snarled. Swing away, dragon. Not swing. He gestured to Balerion's handler, a summer islander whose face bore tattoo swirls like wind maps. Chains rattled. The dragon's black tongue flicked. A gout of flame splashed across stone before Cersei, scorching marble white. Heat washed pews. Men shrank back. Connington barked to hold ranks. Arya felt eyebrows singe from gallery perch. Cersei laughed into the wall of flame, almost joyous. Do it, coward. Burn me as your father burned them all. Viserys descended the dais. The dragon's luminous eyes followed his every step. He halted within reach of flames, heat shimmering about him, sweat beading his brow. For a moment, he seemed to listen to some inner voice only he could hear. Then his gaze locked on Cersei. Dracarys, he whispered. Plasma orange fire engulfed her. Screams ripped the nave. Some Cersei's, some the court's. Skin crisped, hair flared. Gold chains melted against flesh like searing kisses. She tried to rise, only to collapse, a shape of blackened bone. When the flames died, nothing stood that could be called human. The silence after seemed louder than bells. Smoke curled around warped pews. No one moved. Viserys exhaled slow. She dies uncloaked, but justice is clothed anew. He turned back up the dais. Let judgment be recorded. The crown will confiscate all Lannister estates pending oaths of fealty. The rock shall pass to those who bend knee. A low cough of terror. The lords of the West shifted in seats. Viserys sat again. Now we begin. By nightfall, Ravens departed King's Landing in every direction. Black scrolls of despair to some, of opportunity to others. One bore the king's seal to Sunspear, confirm Prince Doran's safe passage. The king invites his presence for counsel. Another flew to Old Town promising pardons to Tarly and Hightower, should they renounce any claim for the boy King Aegon, rumored dead. A third winged north, though no one admitted penning it. It flew across snow-streaked fields to Winterfell, addressed simply to Stark. The parchment within read, "We share enemies. Choose your war. Now." Yet none flew to Highgarden, for Tyrell banners already advanced on Bitterbridge, 6,000 spears under Lady Margaery's griffin-helmed uncle, seeking alliance or vengeance, which no one yet knew. In the dim recess of the small council chamber, Varys laid ledgers before King Viserys and Lord Connington. Flickering lamplight painted the spider's scalp with sweaty sheen. "Coin," he said, tapping ivory quill. The realm's purse was bled by the lioness. "We must refinance." Men saw all. Viserys rolled a peach pit between thumb and forefinger, something Daenerys once did often, habit learned from sister glimpsed across too many campfires. "We have gold fields in the west. Close tunnels until new warden swears," Varys countered. "Caravans will not depart a warfront." Connington leaned forward. "We need the Tyrell harvest more than Lannister coin, and Highgarden fears winter." "Then feed them fear," Viserys said. "Invite Margaery to coronation. Promise her seeds for roses. Threaten ashes if she declines." Varys made a note. "And the faith? Give them wine pardons, and leave to preach in Flea Bottom. Piety cost less than swords." Connington eyed the king. "And Daenerys?" The peach pit stilled. "Not yet. We hold Westeros first. Hearts, not earth. When she comes, she will find a people already mine." "People sway," the knight warned. Viserys' smile flared. "So does fire. Yet both can be banked." Beyond Blackwater Bluff, Arya walked the muddy path to a stable yard, where Brotherhood horses waited. Thoros leaned against a post, flask half empty. Gendry tightened saddle straps. No one spoke until Arya swore, voice low, "She's dead." Gendry's jaw worked. "One name off your list. More remain." She glanced back at the city sprawl, a hive lit by torch webs and dragonfire glimmer. "He killed her quick. Too quick. Better than she gave Ned." Arya squeezed eyes shut. Her father's ghost still lingered behind eyelids each time the wind smelled of baked bread from castle ovens. "Justice should hurt." "Maybe it will," said a voice not belonging to any of them. Sandor Clegane stepped from darkness, limp pronounced, ragged cloak barely hiding scars. He gave them a crooked grin. "Lion bitch burnt, eh? My brother too, they say. Good. Though I'd have liked to split his head myself." Gendry bristled. Arya shifted stance, but Sandor raised palms. "Easy, wolf. I'm bound north. A boy king there might have need of the hound. Oaths mean hue under dragons." Thoros eyed him blearily. "You seek redemption in snow?" "Redemption," Sandor spat. "No, just work. You." "Same," Arya murmured. "I go to Winterfell." She thought of Jon Snow, once her half-brother, now Lord Stark perhaps. Letters said he fought dead things beyond the wall, then vanished. Rumors claimed he swore fealty to a dragon queen. If so, perhaps her path would cross his again sooner than later. 6 days after Cersei's execution, a council assembled in throne room, newly scrubbed of soot. Tyrell envoys in flower-white silks kneeled before Viserys. The young king greeted them warmly, praised Highgarden bread, spoke of his father's love for summer songs. Margaery's uncle returned compliments, offered shipments of grain, even hazarded mention of marriage alliances. Viserys deflected gracefully. He wished to heal the realm before wedding it. Later he confided to Connington, "We keep Highgarden close but not wedded. A bride binds power. Better to court many. You risk many jealous." "Jealousy drives ambition," Viserys said. "Ambition brings coin." Varys applauded. "A masterstroke worthy of Baelish. Littlefinger will dangle soon," the king murmured. "But first we pluck his feathers." Pettier Baelish indeed had returned from the Eyrie to find his spies hanged, his brothels shuttered, his accounts seized by Royal Exchequer under new Master of Coin, a Pentoshi banker recommended by Viserys. When Gold's River shifted, Littlefinger found himself adrift. He wrote letters promising fealty, pressed coins into every greedy palm, but the spider's web now spanned entire Red Keep. On the 7th morning after coronation, guards knocked upon Baelish's manse by the river, and found only a half-packed trunk and a single mockingbird pin. "Hay vanishes," Toyn grumbled, reading the report. "Birds fly," Viserys said. "We net him later." Autumn crept on, leaves bronzing the kingswood. Each dawn, Balerion took longer flights, flames scorching swaths where deer fled squealing. Connington noted worrisome changes. The dragon's appetite doubled. He snapped at handlers. His wings left gouges in tower roofs. "We need a muse," Toyn suggested. Connington snorted at the absurdity of stabling a volcano. Viserys visited his beast every dusk, stroking iriges, murmuring Valyrian lullabies. He seemed to draw strength from the dragon's heartbeat. Sometimes Connington glimpsed something like fear in the boy's eyes, or maybe awe. Awe could sour into terror if not mastered. One evening, Varys approached as the knight watched from parapet. "Beautiful creature," the eunuch mused. "Yet beauty exacts price." "Hay outgrows chains," Connington said. "All things do." Children. Secrets. Kings. They shared a moment of silence, broken only by Balerion's rumbling breath. "You fear him," Varys observed. "I fear for him," Connington corrected. "When dragons soar, men below imagine gods. Gods invite rebellion." "Indeed. Yet a king without miracle becomes merely lord." "Persuade him of moderation, Griff, lest miracle turn monstrosity." Then too. On the 20th day of the 3rd moon, the Iron Fleet appeared off Crackclaw Point. 27 longships, black as storm hearts, sails emblazoned with the Kraken. Euron Crow's Eye led them astride Silence, whose oars beat the sea like a drum of doom. Ravens reached the capital within hours. The Eye offered fealty, a gift, and demanded audience. The message carried scent of damp salt and something fouler. Viserys' council erupted. Toyn urged sinking the fleet with wildfire. Varys counseled caution. Euron's cunning rivaled any lord. Connington suggested meeting under parley banners while catapults stood cocked. The Tyrell envoys begged the king consider their ports at risk. Viserys listened, then proclaimed the Kraken would be welcomed. Under guard, of course, for any enemy of the Lannister Baratheon usurpers might yet serve crown. 2 mornings later, Silence anchored beneath the Red Keep's shadow. Euron stepped ashore wearing armor of black-scaled leather stitched with Valyrian glyphs, one eye a shining sapphire lens, the other laughing. Behind him, 4 thralls carried an object hidden beneath crimson cloth. The courtyard wind teased edges, revealing curves of dark horn inscribed in silver bands. Connington's gut clenched. Dragonbinder.c. The fabled horn said to bind dragons to mortal will, or burn lungs of fool who dared blow it. In the throne room, Euron bowed with theatrical flourish. "Your grace, accept the crow's eyes winged greeting." He gestured. Thralls set the horn upon black velvet. Runes along its rim flickered like coals. Viserys descended 2 steps. "A gift most curious, Lord Greyjoy." "A promise," Euron crooned. "Blow once, and every dragon living or unborn will bow." Balerion hissed from tall arch where he perched. Euron grinned broader. "Of course one must possess lungs worthy of the fire within. I myself have blown thrice." He tapped breastplate. "My heart still beats." Varys whispered to Connington. "If true, he is either blessed or cursed." Viserys circled the horn, fingertips never touching. "You claim allegiance. What seek you?" "Islands. Die. Salt-soaked and storm-lashed. Let the Kraken rule his reefs. Let the dragon rule the Greenlands. Together, we drown the stag's memory and choke the wolf." "Nam?" Connington stiffened. Viserys' face revealed nothing. And if the wolf bends knee? Euron sniffed. Wolves are born to bow or break. A long pause stretched. The throne hall's torches sputtered. Balerian's tail thumped once against floor. Sparks flew. Viserys spoke softly, yet voice carried. You sailed by storms I sent, still clinging to you like grave cloth. Gifts matter less than purpose, Lord Greyjoy. Show me purpose. Euron's grin dimmed. Purpose? I bring a second horn. He nodded. Another thrall produced smaller ebony whistle bound in rusted iron. Blow this, and the dead below the sea will answer. Wights that fear naught of ice nor flame. Marry kraken to dragon, and the world's bones shatter. Connington stepped forward. Enough sorcery. Viserys raised a hand. Forgive Sir Griff. Old wounds make him wary. The crown will consider your gifts, Lord Greyjoy. In the meantime, my harbor welcomes your fleet's resupply, at cost. Euron bowed again, though his smile lost some teeth. Cost is coin. My purse is deep as abyss. Dain. Viserys gestured to guards. Escort Lord Greyjoy to quarters befitting his rank. As Euron departed, Hornglint left alone. Connington hissed, Dangerous. Everything worth power is dangerous, Viserys replied. He studied the runes, eyes reflecting flame. But knowledge lies in danger's heart. Varys exhaled. I shall arrange maesters versed in Valyrian sorcery. No, Viserys said. I will learn it myself. Connington's protest died when he saw the resolve etched in King's jaw. Winterfell's ravens arrived galeborn. Sansa Stark, Lady of the North in all but crown, read the cold parchment thrice while snow hissed against shuttered windows. Jon had not returned. Rumors placed him east, west, beyond the wall, under a dragon queen sky. Yet Viserys courted Stark steel. She summoned Maester Walken, ordered 10 ravens in reply. Some to King's Landing, some to wherever Jon might be found, one to the Vale. If the Dragon King sought alliance, the wolf would weigh claws carefully. In her solar, Brienne of Tarth polished Oathkeeper. Half an eye always on Sansa at D. Do we trust him? We trust no one, Sansa answered. But her thoughts strayed to Arya's last letter, carried by a faceless sparrow 5 moons ago. Heading south. Wolves together again soon. She touched the dire wolf pin at throat. Sisters parted by war could yet converge by dragons. Far across the narrow sea, Daenerys' fleet hugged the coast of Pentos. Tyrion paced deck, reading fresh ravens from spies. Viserys crowned, Cersei burned, Euron at court. A storm brewed to north, sails groaning. Dany stared into gathering dusk, sea salt dampening silver hair. He has Balerion, Tyrion said gently. 1 dragon only. You have 3. Dragons alone don't win thrones, she murmured. Ask Aegon. He had friends. You have me, Tyrion offered, half jest. And armies yet to cross. She lifted chin. Drogon shrieked overhead, wings slapping wind. But the realm bleeds. If I wait, his roots deepen. Ships at Slaver's Bay ready, Jorah Mormont reported. We can sail within fortnight. Then we sail. She said. Prince or pretender, Viserys forgot mercy long ago. I will remind him. Then to one. Tyrion closed his eyes, imagined flames dancing above Blackwater again. In one future, dragons collided and the world cracked. Unless some cunning twist uncoiled the fates binding them. He sipped wine, already plotting diverging lines on the Sevastboard. Night-cloaked kings landing in humid shroud. Lightning rippled distant clouds. Storms to come. In a candlelit chamber deep within Maegor's holdfast, Viserys traced a rune from Dragonbinder's etched bands. Every stroke seemed to pulse heat beneath his finger. Varys stood nearby. Silence personified. What do you see? The king asked. A tool, Varys replied carefully. But tools shape the wielder as much as what they strike. Viserys considered. A horn that bends dragons, or bends kings. The latter, if tongues fail to master the former. The king smiled faintly. Then I shall master both. He lifted the horn. Its weight surprised him. Heavier than iron, colder than snow, humming with something alive. He brought it to lips, inhaled. Griff will flay me if this kills you, Varys cautioned. Viserys exhaled without sounding. Not yet. First we test. He set the horn down. Tomorrow at dawn bring Balerion to the river bluff. As you command. When Varys withdrew, Viserys remained staring at runes glowing faintly as embers. Outside, thunder boomed. He whispered Valyrian words older than old Valyria, tasting ash and salt. Prophecies twined in memory. Dragon has 3 heads. A prince is promised. The world shall end in fire and ice. Yet none promised what might happen if 2 dragons warred. Horns screamed, and krakens rose. Viserys closed eyes. In darkness, he saw Daenerys' face. Not the timid sister he once tormented, but a queen forging armies from chains. Her dragons screamed across black sky. He felt fear for first time in moon's quicksilver flash. Fear fed ambition. So he thanked it, bound it, sharpened it. At window, Balerion roared toward lightning. Viserys whispered, "Soon, my child. Soon we teach the world obedience." Dawn broke, bruised purple. On the bluff above Blackwater Rush, Connington and 24 captains formed a circle, uneasy eyes flicking between horn and dragon. Balerion's wings beat restless eddies of dust. He sensed tension thick as smoke. Viserys stepped into clearing, horn cradled like infant. He raised free hand. "If I fall, Griff reigns until heir chosen." Connington's throat bobbed. "Your grace." "No time." He breathed deep, pressed horn to mouth. Air around seemed to still, as if the world itself waited. The note that burst shook every stone of the hill. It was no mortal sound, it clawed marrow, ruptured thought. Men clapped hands to ears. Some screamed. Connington felt blood trickle. Toyne fell to knees, eyes wide, tears streaming. Balerion reared, wings hammering. Flames sprayed skyward, incandescent. He shrieked, not pain, but submission. The dragon lowered forequarters until snout scraped earth, wings folded. Viserys staggered, horn clattering from lips. Smoke curled from nostrils. Skin about neck blistered crimson. He swayed. Connington caught him. "Your grace." Viserys pushed upright, panting. I am well." He stared at Balerion, wonder ablaze. Heard. "He obeyed," Varys corrected, emerging from brush with half-dozen scribes scribbling frantic notes. 8 cost. He pointed to horn, its silver bands now glowing dull red, a hairline crack snaking toward mouthpiece. Viserys touched throat, winced at blisters. "Everything costs." He smiled despite pain. "Prepare a second test." Connington gripped his arm. "Enough for one dawn. For a king, dawn never ends." Viserys shrugged free. He approached Balerion, pressed blistered hand to scalding snout. The dragon crooned low. Toyne whispered, "The world just changed." Varys' eyes glittered. "And yet it spins." That night, ships burned off Dragonstone. Rhaenys, former war galley of Stannis, erupted into pillars of fire as shadowy silhouettes rode away. No one claimed sabotage. Rumors blamed pirates, Tyrell agents, Red Priests. But Connington suspected other players, perhaps Greyjoy hands testing waters. War lines tangled narrower each sunrise. In quiet hours, Griff met with Davos Seaworth, smuggler knight newly arrived by cockle skiff. Davos brought tidings. Shireen Baratheon, alive in Braavos, under Braavosi protection. Stannis missing in Wolfswood. Jon Snow proclaimed king in the north by wildling hosts, but vanished thereafter. The Onion Knight asked if justice remained in Westeros. Connington answered with silence. Davos pressed on. "Your king wields dragon and horn. But does he wield compassion? Then? Endow. Compassion tempered by purpose, Connington said. Purpose can scorch lands into desert. They parted uneasy. Beyond the neck, a raven reached Castle Black. Only a skeleton garrison remained, a dozen ragged brothers under Dolorous A.D., who read Viserys' letter by guttering lantern. Ed sighed. Kings multiply quicker than fleas on a dead mule. He penned reply. The Night's Watch serves realm, whichever king sends gold and grain. Then he fed the raven a crust, wondering if winter kings even listened. Ghost padded across rampart. Fur silver in moonlight, ears pricked northward. Somewhere out there Jon Snow stalked icy wastes near Eastwatch with Tormund Giantsbane, chasing whispers of a horn older than the world. Horns, kings, dragons. The world cracked indeed. In the far north, a frozen wind howled through Valley of Then. Jon Snow led ragged column, black cloak rhymed white, long claw sheathed in mammoth hide baldric. Night fell early. Aurora rippled scarlet across star-blown vault. Tormund trod alongside, muttering of gods and fools. Ahead, a crevice yawned where whites once surged. Jon paused, breathing steam. If the Horn of Winter lies here, we must find it before others. Tormund spat. Break the wall. Let clever men blow horns to death. We need food. Yet, they pressed on, chasing prophecy. For if Viserys raised dragons, and Daenerys sailed dragons, and somewhere deep the dead stirred, only ancient power might stand between realm and ruin. Jon remembered who had taught him. Aegon the Conqueror built with fire. Bran the Builder with ice. Fire fought storm. Ice stayed flood. Both together, forged balance. Could horns bind them? He trudged deeper into snowy gloom, whisper of wolves at his heel. 2 moons later, King's Landing thrummed with pageantry. Viserys' coronation at last arrived, an event delayed until harvest wagons rolled safely past Hayford, until Tyrell envoys agreed to lend Orchard's bounty, until Greyjoy ships transported Cassana League's grain to dock. Now the city drank, danced, vomited in alleyways. Rose petals drifted on breezes heavy with garlic stew. Street mummers reenacted Cersei's flaming demise while children giggled. Inside the Red Keep's grand yard, a new dais held the Iron Throne beneath scarlet canopy. Viserys approached clad in white enamel armor over black silk, crown of dark swords, newly hammered to encircle silver hair. Balerion glided overhead, scattering doves released at signal. High Septon anointed the king's brow with 7 oils. Bells rang. Connington's heart swelled. He remembered Rhaegar's melody once plucked on Summerhall steps. The song remained unfinished. Perhaps this day completed a verse. Viserys turned, lifted sword. Lords and ladies, small folk of Crownlands, I am your sword and shield. Stand with me against famine, falsehood, fear. Together we build a realm strong as Valyrian steel. Cheers erupted. The city roared his name. Fireworks, gifts from Kuahor traders, burst above, painting sky green gold. Balerion roared in answer, flame-carving arcs. Children shrieked delight. Nobles flinched. It seemed victory. Yet in the harbor, Euron Greyjoy stood atop Silence's prow, sapphire eye fixed on dragon. He whispered to a priest with lips sewn shut, who dipped black whistle in salt blood. They waited. Beyond the horizon, Daenerys' fleet crested waves like glimmering crescent. Drogon screeched, sensing kin. Tyrion sipped wine, mind turning gears. North of the wall, Jon Snow knelt in cavern lit by glacier light, hand upon massive black horn buried centuries. He felt an echo thrumming, not song but heartbeat of world. And deep under King's Landing, in tunnels Maegor forgot, green wildfires seeped from cracked pots, stirred by quakes each time Dragonbinder sounded. A single spark could wake sleeping ghosts. The game was set. Dragon against dragon. Horn against horn. Ice against fire. Viserys crowned himself master of obedience, yet obedience bends but never breaks prophecy. As shadows lengthened, the realm teetered at edge of dawn that might become eternal blaze. But for this night, Laughter filled the streets, wine flowed, and torches lit a capital dreaming it had been saved. Above, Balerion beat wings in wide circle, ember eyes gleaming like twin suns. He watched the world as dragons ever do. With hunger, with wonder, and with the faintest memory of doom. Key. The moon had not yet slipped beneath the battlements of the Red Keep, when Viserys Targaryen rose from the narrow camp bed, in the solar of the king, and lifted the cracked horn from its velvet cradle. A dull, crimson vein still pulsed beneath the silver bands, as though the thing drew breath even in silence. He could hear it, a faint thrum, like a distant organ note that vibrated skin rather than air. The maesters had fled the chamber at sunset, muttering of corrupt magic, but Viserys had watched the shadows creep along the tiles, measuring how the light settled on the tiny fissures running from mouth to point. One more sounding, he promised the darkness. One more, and the world will bend. He crossed the room barefoot, stepping over half-rolled charts of the Blackwater and banners waiting to be stitched with his sigil. At the balcony balustrade the wind slapped his face with salt, and below the whispering sound rippled like a mirror tinged with copper. Far out, lanterns on the masts of Euron's ships winked and vanished in lingering fog. The Kraken dreamed, no doubt, of hooks sunken deep in dragons. Viserys set the horn on the stone rail and looked north, toward the stars that glittered above the narrow finger of Arya's torch. Beyond that black horizon Daenerys sailed. He could all but taste her approach in the tang on the breeze. A mixture of ash and myrrh, of blood and promise. She would come with 3 dragons, a prophet's number, and the bells of King's Landing would not be enough to drown their screams. Unless the horn sang first. Balerion landed on a gargoyle not 10 paces away, talons scoring limestone. The young dragon's eyes flickered red in the moonlight. His wings rustled with the hush of parchment pages turning. Viserys met that gaze, and felt an answering pulse in his chest. "Fear nothing," he whispered in High Valyrian. "The song is for them, not you. You have already learned obedience." Balerion dipped his head, as if acknowledging a private pact. Then he lashed his tail once, and leapt back into the night, sailing toward the darkness above the street of silk, where rats scuttled, and drunks staggered home from coronation revels. Viserys watched him go, until shadow swallowed scale, then lifted the horn. His throat still bore blistered rings from the first trial. Maester Balabar, before fleeing, had begged him to smear a salve of comfrey and hare's blood, but Viserys left the welts unbound. Pain anchored resolve. He pressed the mouthpiece to cracked lips, filling his lungs with air that smelled of lemon cakes baked hours ago for a feast now grown cold. 1 heartbeat, 2, he blew. The sound that tore free seemed to rip a seam in the night sky. It boomed out across the rooftops, rattling shutters, toppling a soldier's pike where it leaned against the armory door. In flea-bottom panes shattered, dogs howled. Mothers clutched babes to breast. The bells of Visenya's hill shivered on their ropes. And from above came a roar so primal, every sparrow and gull flapped skyward in panic. Balerion answering the call. Viserys staggered, yet held the note until lungs burned. Hot blood trickled from his left nostril. Black spots burst before his eyes. He tasted copper and truth. When at last he broke the seal of sound, he sagged against the balustrade, the horn slipping from numbed fingers. It struck stone, rolled, and cracked anew, issuing a hiss like escaping steam. Below, answers came. Dragons, plural, Dial. First Balerion, wings swollen with fire, circled the summit of the Tower of the Hand, tail streaming sparks. Then, from far south across the dark of the bay, a deeper thunder rose, and a shape eclipsed the sliver moon. Drogon, 30 times Balerion's mass, driving an airquake before him. His cry was the sound of glaciers calving. Behind him swept 2 smaller shadows, green and cream, Viserion and Rhaegal, banking wide as hawks stooping upon prey. Their mother would not be far. Viserys forced himself upright, fingers clutching the railing until knuckles shone bone white. Every instinct screamed to flee the balcony. Instead he raised both arms as though the wind itself would grant him wings. "Come," he breathed. Tyrion Lannister, far below on the exopanian cogwinds of dusk, stared at the silhouetted dragons and muttered a curse that would have embarrassed a Lysine pillow boy. "We're seen," he told Daenerys beside him. She already knew. The violet glow in her eyes said so. Cloaked in night-black silks, hair whipping like a pale banner, she stood at the prow, one hand resting light on Drogon's scaled shoulder, where the beast had crouched to ferry them from flagship to dock. "My brother blows horns at ghosts," she answered. "But ghosts do not kneel." "Oh. Hay has one living dragon, my queen. A young molten candle, yes, but the horn is his leash." She lifted her chin. "Mine is love." Tyrion snorted. "Love rarely melts steel, your grace." A flick of her hand sent Drogon skyward on thunderous currents. The sails snapped. Sailors cried out and flattened themselves on planks as the Titan cleared the masts by scant feet. Rhaegal and Viserion followed, weaving between canted spars and stacks of cargo like hunting serpents. Tyrion braced against the rail and watched them ascend toward the shadowed mass of the Red Keep. Each wing beat strobing moonlight across the gilded coronet of Aegon's high hill. Behind him, Jorah Mormont barked commands to the men preparing skiffs. Daario Naharis leaned on his arak, braids jingling. "Shall we storm the city walls, little lion?" "Not tonight," Tyrion said. "Let the dragons sing their sermon. We listen for sinners." The gatehouse of the King's Gate exploded as Drogon's first jet of fire slashed across rooftops. Not an attack. An announcement. A 10-yard swath of slate roof tiles glowed cherry, then slid off in molten sheets, splattering courtyards below. Windows burst outward, belching smoke. The scream of the horn still hung in the air, a pulse fading to memory, replaced now by the frantic clash of alarm bells in every quarter. Connington was already armored when a breathless squire burst into his chambers. "My lord, 3 dragons, bigger than Balerion." "I saw," Connington said. He buckled Griffin Claw across his chest. "Summon the captains. Endersandal. They ride the walls. Then meet them there. Enderandau." Golden Company veterans poured from barracks, pulling helm straps, slotting barbed bolts into Myrish winch bows. Toyn's roar echoed across the inner bailey. "Hold fast. No shafts loosed without my word." Panic in a dragon siege was death. One spark on wildfire caches would turn the hill to glass. Viserys stormed into the yard, cloak torn by wind. His voice cracked with smoke and triumph. "Balerion is mine. The others are prey." He strode toward the stables where the handlers struggled to wrestle Iron Jaw curb onto his dragon's head. "Loose him," Viserys ordered. Toyn blocked his path, helm under arm. "Your grace, Balerion is half their weight. A lion kills a horse thrice its mass with one bite." Viserys shoved him aside. "Fire is king, not size." Connington seized the king's elbow. "Then let the dragons duel in sky. You remain alive." "Alive means master." Viserys ripped free. "Unbind him." Chains clanged. Balerion surged past, wings snapping. Viserys mounted with a cat's grace, every week of training showing at last, and clamped thighs around trembling shoulders. The young dragon launched upward, tourney lists scattering as the downdraft flung straw and helms. In the streets below, Arya Stark flitted like a shadow through nodding crowds. The horn's echo had drawn her from a rat-chewed bunk at the Candlemaker's Rest. Now she ran toward Dragon Pit Hill, needle in one hand, the other gripping a black lacquer mask taken from a Braavosi mummer. If the city turned to chaos, names might fall easier than tears. And a queen whose smile lit pyres, Arya still needed that face. But first, she wanted sight of the silver-haired imposter, who called himself Wolf Ally in letters north. She paused beneath the arch of a burned bakery and watched the sky bloom orange. One dragon swooped low, a beast of green gold whose emerald scales shimmered like broken glass in sunrise. He banked above Flea Bottom, and for an instant Arya saw a rider clinging behind a ridge of spikes, a dark-skinned woman in whipcord leathers, black hair whipping. Valyrian words curled from her mouth, lost in rushing wind. The beast answered with a shriek that rattled chimney pots. Arya's awe hardened to resolve. If dragons were to remake the world, she would stand where the world cracked. On the outer walls near Mudgate, Euron Greyjoy crouched beside his mute warlocks. Sapphire eye glinting. He watched Balerian's ascent, measured the young dragon's gasping strokes as he labored to climb the black vault, where Drogon circled broad as night itself. Euron licked his lips. "Blow," he commanded. The thrall lifted the smaller horn, lips puckered. The sound it produced was thinner, yet keener than Viserys' blast. A whispered promise of graves, high and slicing. Shadows writhed. A chill raced down the spines of Sellsword's manning scorpions. Ice formed on iron heads. Above, Viserion faltered mid-bank, wings jittering, as though invisible hooks lodged in flesh. Rhaegal screamed confusion. Drogon's pupils narrowed to coals. Euron smiled. Now the great beasts learn whose depths water the drowned god. He unpacked oiled chain and grapples of Valyrian steel set with shimmering glyphs. "Tonight, I claim one." Across the courtyard of the dragon pit, Varys hurried through smoke, ushering ragged smallfolk into tunnel mouths that led beneath the hill. "Follow," he urged, voice calm yet edged. "Keep children close. Your king shelters you below." In truth, he had no idea whether any place was safe, but a man who saved lives could later trade them for loyalty. A hooded girl brushed past. Varys paused, recognizing the grace of a trained blade. He might have called out, yet his own secrets pressed heavier. Instead, he let her vanish. Inside a vaulted cellar, Maester Balabar and Qyburn bent over glass phials of wildfire, upending them into ceramic orbs the pyromancers called widow's eggs. Qyburn's grin showed blackened teeth. "So simple," he mused. "A spark and the sky surrenders." Balabar trembled. "We hedge doom with greater doom." "We hedge victory," Qyburn said. "Or we perish without wailing." On the horizon, sunrise bled across the sea, turning waves to molten brass. Daenerys rode the rim of dawn, the silhouette of her figure stark against nacre clouds. Drogon dipped, beating back toward the Red Keep. She leaned forward in saddle straps fashioned from leather and dragonbone, her hair streaming. "Brother," she whispered, "come meet me." Balerion met Drogon north of the dragon pit, a sparrow to a hawk. Viserys raised his sword, pointless steel in such company. But symbolism mattered. "Dracarys," he cried. Orange flame leapt from Balerion's jaws. Drogon rolled, wings sweeping aside the gout as a child swats smoke. Then Drogon exhaled. It was not flame alone. It was furnace breath, black at core, fringed in red so pure it sliced the eye. Balerion corkscrewed, scales blistering. Viserys felt heat sear tunic to flesh. He clamped thighs, forced the dragon to recover. "Again," he commanded. The horn's echo still quivered in his bones. He dug that resonance into Balerion's will. The young dragon snarled, obeyed, lit the sky once more. Below, scorpions loosed yard-long iron bolts. Connington bellowed for restraint, but too late. One bolt streaked past Drogon's left wing, missed by yards, lodged in a buttress. The great dragon swung his head, torch-red eye fixed on the wall. He dove. Connington swore. "Seize. Do nothing." Bolt crews scattered as Drogon's shadow blanketed the parapet. Fire erupted, a hammer of heat. Men leapt screaming into the courtyards. Stone ran like candle wax. Connington flung shield over two squires, dragging them behind a Merlon. He watched armor melt on bodies still living, felt bile rise. Glory was a liar. On the Queen's Gate Road, Sansa Stark's envoy troop, 10 riders under white direwolf banners, saw a smoke pillar into clouds and reined in. Sir Brienne lowered helm visor. "We wait," she told Sansa. "We cannot ride into dragonfire." Enderro. Sansa's eyes reflected the inferno's orange glow. "We came for peace. Peace may already be ash." She weighed choices, ride back and fortify the north, or press on through ruin and bargain with whichever dragon survived. The latter was madness. But living in terror of southern whims was a worse fate. "We ride," she said. Brienne's protest died on her tongue. She wheeled her warhorse. The first collision of dragons ended when Balerion retreated, wings tattered at the tips, smoking. Viserys guided the beast past the broken top of the Kingspire, down toward the river gate, where water mist might salve burns. He was alive. The horn's power thrummed like molten lead in veins. Yet Drogon remained above, unscathed, turning slow coils that felt like judgment. Daenerys called down. Her voice carried across early morning hush. Pure, clear command. "Brother, land. Speak." Viserys wiped charred blood from brow. "Parley?" he shouted. "Or surrender?" Truth." She reined Drogon toward the plaza of the Dragon Gate, settling atop the charred tiles that once paved Aegon's victory route. Rhaegal and Viserion flanked, wings mantled. The green's tail lashed rubble. The cream dragon hissed at columns now leaning drunkenly from heat. Daenerys dismounted. Firelight gilded her cheeks. Viserys landed opposite, dismounting in stiff pain. He strode across cracked flagstones littered with embers. The city seemed to hold its breath. Only crackle and distant weeping broke silence. They faced each other at 10 paces. "My king," she began, accepting, at least nominally, his claim. "My queen," he answered, voice hoarse. "Why summon me with stolen song?" She gestured toward the horn still clutched in his hand. "To show power," Viserys said. "A king's greeting." He laughed bitterly. "Father's throne is mine. I invited you to share it." Dany's gaze flicked to the ruined parapets, the dead men still smoking. "Share? I hold the land, sister. You hold the sky." He raised the horn. "Together." She cut him off. "Together the world burns. Eau. To forge anew. Eindau." Words spoken by every tyrant. Eindau. Viserys' jaw clenched. "Tyrant? Our birthright was stolen. I reclaim it. Birthright is not rule." Dany lifted a hand. "See what rule means." She pointed to a mother kneeling beside a charred corpulent body near the gate. Perhaps a husband crushed under falling masonry. When men at horns call, rule rots into terror. And Viserys followed her gaze but did not soften. "Terror is coin. Spend it wisely, you can buy peace. And when the coin is spent." She stepped closer. Heat shimmered between them. "I came for justice. And justice is mine to give." He inhaled, raised horn anew. Dany's eyes widened. "Do not sound it again. It will kill you." Rage shook him. "Better be a dragon than live a beggar." He put horn to lips. A flash of steel glinted. A small hand, deft and sure, darted from behind a fallen statue. Arya Stark slashed upward. Needle's point caught the cracked fissure on the horn's mouthpiece and levered, snapping chunk away. The horn crumbled inward like rotten bone. A scream smote the air. Viserys' throat half-formed the note. Then blood flooded his mouth, lungs collapsing under sudden pressure as magic backlashed. He lurched forward, dropping shards. Smoke poured from nostrils. Blisters erupted along jaw. Arya danced back, eyes wide. Drogon reared, sensing chaos. Balerion screeched and lunged, fury unbound. Before he could reach Arya, Daenerys shouted a word harsh as grinding granite. Drogon slammed sideways into the younger dragon, pinning with talon before Balerion could flame. The plaza shook. Viserys collapsed to knees, choking. Daenerys rushed to him. "Brother!" She cradled his head. His violet eyes bled crimson tears. Soot and blood smeared her fingers. "Dragon, remember," he rasped. "Bow them, all bow." A cough sprayed red foam. "Tell them, I..." Breath rattled once, twice. His eyes fixed on distant spires. Or perhaps on a future never born. They went still. Balerion writhed but held beneath Drogon's weight. The young dragon's chest heaved, his eyes rolled. Dany stroked Drogon's neck. "Easy, my love. Peace." She looked to Arya, who still held needle low, ready. "Who are you?" the queen asked. "No one," Arya answered. "And Arya Stark." "He would have killed you all." "Perhaps." Dany studied her a moment. "You carry courage and grief." She rose, wiping blood onto torn skirt. "Help me carry him." Together, they lifted Viserys' body onto a broken slab beside the shattered horn. Smoke drifted about the silent square. Dawn proper brushed the towers with gold. From the harbor bells tolled, though uncertain whether for death or deliverance. Connington arrived with 50 gold-and-white griffins, swords drawn. He stopped at the spectacle. Queen of dragons, fallen king, wolves among lions. He knelt. "Your Grace," he faltered, uncertain whom he addressed. Dany faced him. "I am Daenerys Stormborn, of House Targaryen, first of my name, Queen of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the First Men." She swallowed. "And I am sister to the king who is no more." Her gaze traveled the lined faces of sellsword captains. "I do not come to break your oaths. I ask them." Anew, Toyn knelt. Then, another. One by one the Golden Company lowered banners. Some hesitated, but the sight of 3 living dragons ended debate. Euron watched from atop the battlement. He spat salt. "Damn." He turned to his mute priest. "Another game then. Ready the Iron Victory." He slipped away down stairwells unseen. Tyrion and Jorah entered the plaza moments later. They took in the scene. Horn dust, smoldering rubble. Daenerys speaking soft Valyrian over her dead brother. Tyrion's shoulders sagged in relief and sorrow. "It ends in ash as ever. Perhaps begins," Jorah said. "She stands." Tyrion approached Arya. He noted the girl's haunted eyes, the blood on her sleeve. "You swung fate on a needle, my lady." "And I'm not a lady." Arya wiped blade clean. "But fate needed stabbing." He almost smiled. "Stay near. Queens need truth as much as daggers." Night came again before the city calmed. Fires burned in the Blackwater where casks of pitch had split. But the dragons settled atop Aegon's high hill, and small folk peered from shattered windows to see them haloed by sparks against the starlit vault. Whispers spread. The Silver Queen wept for her brother. She fed the hungry in Flea Bottom from Tyrell wagons. She ordered maesters to tend burned guards. She spared even those who cursed her. The day had scorched, yet night cooled with promise. In the crypts beneath the Red Keep, Varys lit a single candle before a granite visage of old King Belor. The spider had scuttled through tunnels all afternoon, snipping final threads now tangled beyond mending. As flame flickered, he whispered, "On game for another." He drew forth a letter sealed with 3-headed dragon. "Dear Lady of the North," he murmured, "the realm changes. Bring your pack." In Winterfell, Sansa received the raven by torchlight. She read, turned to Brienne. "Viserys is dead. Daenerys holds the capital. She invites the North to council." Brienne asked softly, "Will you go?" Sansa looked at snow swirling beyond casement. "Jon must know." She penned a swift letter, praying wind found him. "If he will not come, I must." Her hand lingered on Brienne's gauntlet. "And you with me?" South, at Storm's End, Gendry Baratheon met Lady Margaery atop the sea battlements. Rumors arrived with each gust. "If dragons rule," he said, "do lions still matter?" "Lions lost their roar," Margaery replied. "But roses bloom in ash." She turned eyes bright with cunning. "A Baratheon and a Tyrell once saved this realm from madness. Perhaps we do so again." Ravens flew. Alliances shifted as rivers after quake. The Iron Bank weighed bets. Qarth whispered of trade convoys. In the free cities, sellsword companies packed gear for new wars or old debts. In the Stepstones, Corsairs argued over which dragon was she-dragon. But in King's Landing, dawn rose on the second day after Viserys' fall. Daenerys stood on the balcony where her brother had blown the death horn. She watched smoke drift, felt heat still in stone, and addressed a city whose fear quivered like harp strings. "I know what you suffered," she said. Her voice carried by Queen's men with bronze trumpets. "You lost kings to poison and fire. You lost daughters and sons to horns and hunger. I lost too. Today we begin again. No more horns. No more wildfire. Only justice. Swift, but tempered." In the square of the acolytes, small folk listened. Some weeping, some skeptical. But bread arrived at dawn, free loaves from Highgarden mills. Buckets of well water poured down streets to douse embers. Golden Company sentries escorted orphan children to septs-turned shelters. Hope too can burn, but its flame heals. In a shaded alcove, Tyrion drafted edicts. Abolish child taxes, open granaries, appoint Davos Seaworth master of ships. He paused, ink drying. "We need a hand of the queen," he murmured. Dany entered. "Write your name." He blinked. "May?" "Enden." She nodded. "You gave me truth. You survived my dragons." "Sir." His smile was small. "I should like a taller chair." "Build one tea." "And I." He dipped quill, scrawled. "Then may we never need horns again." Beyond the city walls, Jon Snow approached on a weary Garren beside Tormund Giantsbane and a retinue of northern scouts. He bore no banners, only the memory of ghosts and the weight of an ancient horn now sealed in hides strapped behind saddle. The wall's doom in one hand, perhaps its salvation in another. When he saw the dragons etched against sunrise, he closed eyes. "Time to pay debts," he said. Tormund grunted. "I hate castles. They make bad privies." Jon urged horse forward. In his pocket lay Sansa's letter. In his heart burned questions. Could dragon fire melt winter? Could sister slay brother yet heal realm? Could a bastard become bridge between ice and flame? As the great Sept district loomed ahead, the bells tolled again. Not in alarm this time, but in summons. From every quarter banners of houses great and small fluttered. Direwolf of Stark, Rose of Tyrell, Kraken of Greyjoy, Grimly, Sunspear of Martell carried by copper-skinned emissaries, and over all the three-headed dragon of Targaryen, in black and red, edges still frayed where Viserys' horn had scorched silk. "The Council of Dragons," the people whispered. No one yet knew if the council would end in covenant or catastrophe. But for the first time in a generation, 3 living dragons perched on the towers of Aegon City, their wings folded in uneasy truce, while men and women gathered beneath to speak of law rather than fire. From a high casement, Arya watched Jon dismount. She touched Needle's hilt and smiled. One name remained, but it belonged neither to queen nor to king. Night King, she thought, a foe of another tale. Yet ice still marched somewhere north of Shattered Wall. Dragons here, darkness there. Balance hung by a single thread. In a vaulted chamber, Daenerys unfolded a map drawn anew. River lines traced in fresh ink, charred corners replaced. She set black stones on regions loyal, white stones on those undecided, red stones on lands in flames. Then she placed the cracked mouthpiece of Dragonbinder atop the Iron Throne sketched at the center. A reminder. Viserys' body burned on a cedar pyre that night, Balerion keening overhead, until ash drifted like silver snow. Daenerys spoke a single prayer in Valyrian and scattered horn shards among the embers. Let no man bind a dragon again. She vowed. When flames died, a hush fell. Somewhere distant, perhaps beyond Duskendale, thunder rumbled that was not storm. Jon Snow felt the ground quiver beneath his feet. Tormund spat. "Giants?" he asked. "Or dead things marching?" Jon answered. In the hush between wars, Hearts seldom rest. The queen returned to her chambers, opened a parchment Raven had brought from Old Town. Archmaester Marwyn requesting audience, bearing news of a comet that split the sky above the citadel, an omen of frigid doom. Dany exhaled. One war at a time. She murmured, but knew the lie. Below, Varys plotted the weaving of new webs. Davos inspected burnt hulls for salvage. Gendry hammered sigils into fresh scorpion bolts, though his eyes never strayed far from the queen, or from the new hand scribbling laws. Euron's ships weighed anchor in moonless dark, sliding north with sails black as Star Eater's wings. He carried stolen maps and dreams of darker horns. Kraken takes what storms leave behind, he whispered to the silent priest who lashed wheel. When dragons fly north, we drown their south. Ender. And in the ice-bitten ruins of Eastwatch, pale figures gathered around blue glowing eyes of a resurrected bear. They smelt smoke on wind, feared flame, yet marched still. Horn or no, the ancient call rose within frozen breast. Bring winter. But for one brief dawn, King's Landing stood between fires yet to kindle. The queen watched sunrise from the same balcony where Viserys had sealed his fate. Pink and gold painted sky, soft as lullaby. Dragons dozed, tail tips twitching. Below, city woke. Water carriers, cobblers, laughing children chasing stray cats. Dany pressed cool stone under burned palm, felt pulse of a realm beginning anew. She whispered into breeze, as if to every heart below, we will try. By ash and by answer, we will try. And shall. Far away, a horn of black ice waited, patient as the grave. And the game, at last, had gained its final pieces.